Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen. Beautiful day it is today here in the Midwest. It is December 2nd. Here in about an hour and 18 minutes, it's our homeboy Blake's birthday.
Oh, okay. Cool
Uh,
beans.
So give a shout out to you, Blake, because I know you listen. But happy birthday, man.
How old is he turning? Like 26?
Yeah, I think so. I could be wrong. Not entirely sure. I just,
Random guess.
25, 26. I'm bad with numbers, man.
Yeah, me too.
Remembering stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't even know how old I am, really.
Bro, ladies and gentlemen out there, or to all our junkies, man, Jesse's back in the podcast seat.
Back in business, man. Back in business.
Yeah, and it's none of his fault. We had some bad weather last week.
Week before that had family. I can call it family stuff now, even though it kind of scares me a little bit.
I wouldn't call it family stuff, bro. You had an allergic reaction to cats, right?
But it had to do with me hanging out with my girl's her family. So
yeah, there's nothing wrong with that, man.
yeah, it's all good.
Sometimes a few weeks off is good. Gets the mind running and the ocean flowing.
Maybe 1 week, 2 weeks is a little too long, but
Yeah,
it
The
is
we-
what it is.
the weather you can't really control, but hey, man, we're back in business. We're gonna probably do 2 podcasts tonight. This will be the hour long one. Then we're gonna do a 20-minute long one about Cream Hunt. So for those of you tuning in right now, be prepared for another video after this one for how we feel about the situation with Cream Hunt.
Yeah, super pumped for that one.
So I'm gonna kind of throw Jesse on blindsided right now. I mean, I kind of told him what I want to talk about tonight, and I don't think he's really too knowledgeable on the facts of Agenda 21 and Agenda 30, but I think he could give some good insight just based off what I know about it, and just see what his thoughts are, and just go from there.
Cool. I like it.
Yeah, man. So I guess Agenda 21 was brought into the UN in 1992, and I haven't really read the whole manuscript or any of that stuff on exactly what it is. And obviously, when the UN comes out with stuff, or any style of government, they put it like in the fine details where you have to read the absolute every line to find out what truly is going on.
Yeah.
But I think you got the gist of what I was talking about, just basically that it's population control, and everyone thinks that Agenda 21 basically is, at one point or another, they want everyone to live in large cities, right? So you have New York, Los Angeles, Kansas City or St. Louis, and everyone would congregate in just large cities, and they would build just lots of buildings that are really high, apartment buildings, and just stack everyone in those buildings.
I think you referenced the movie Judge Dredd.
Yeah.
Whenever you were first telling me about this.
Yeah, and you've seen the buildings in that movie. It was insane.
Yeah. No, absolutely insane.
So
So it was like whole cities in just like one building. Fucking yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah. And you're going to have everything close to you. You're not going to need a vehicle. You're not going to put any emissions into the air. There's not going to be as much pollution, but in those small areas of congregation of people, it's going to be filthy and disgusting, I feel like. It'd be slums. How would rich people at that point would still have to, basically what it comes down to is the government wants to own all of the land. And the UN actually came out and they said that no person should own any type of land. I think I told you that.
Yeah, you did.
Just for the fact that they think that if there were ever any conflicting interest on what the purpose was for that land, that's why people shouldn't own land.
Well, it's already to the point now to where people don't really own land. Like you can have land like rented from the government for a period of time, but if you don't pay your personal property tax, they'll eventually take it, or the bank will take it, and then it pretty much will always end up in the hands of the government, no matter what. But I think what you're saying is they're taking it a step further to where they want just control of all the land, like completely, and you don't even have that little say in it for like your lifespan while you're here,
Right.
kind of thing.
Because I think what it comes down to is there are actually some countries that they don't have AC or heating, and in every house in America, minus like Los Angeles or the California side or the Florida side where it doesn't necessarily get that cold, they don't really need heating, utensils in their house or heating, appliances, stuff like that. But here in the Midwest, everyone has a furnace, everyone has an air conditioning unit, and just the amount of pollutions that emits into the sky, the amount of electricity that takes to fuel 350 million Americans.
Mm.
I think the goal is for them is a cleaner Earth, a more sustainable Earth is what the direction that the UN's trying to go in, and in doing so, they think that if they put people in large populations in small areas, that it would be a better Earth for years to come. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't agree with that. Just putting people I mean that's a very small. I think that's a small aspect to solving any kind of like non-renewable resource like kind of scenario, or where there's pollution or anything like that. I mean, yeah, you can come up with facilities that are like super highly efficient and super green, but you can't just pack everybody into one building and think that that's going to solve everything.
Well, and there's some states that have already done it. California, I told you about that, where this guy was shooting a video, and you had an apartment complex, and it wasn't just like multiple apartment complexes. It was one that stretched for a quarter mile, maybe a little bit less, but it was right around that amount of area. And who knows how wide, but, I mean, it had to have been maybe 1,000 to 2,000 apartments in this one small building. And it looked like a penitentiary. And I guess that they already have apartments like that in China, in like Japan, and in Colorado. So, I mean, it's slowly
You're talking about
like
Compton and shit. I mean, like they've had like near like compound like fucking places for like Compton's been a thing for a long time, and that's very
like project housing.
Yeah, like project housing.
This is like that on steroids, though. Like how big these buildings are.
Yeah,
and how many people they can fit in.
I mean, I've even seen stuff from like it was either like Japan or China, where like people had literally like 10 by 10 foot spaces where that was their complete fucking like living space. They couldn't even like stand up in their apartments that were completely overpriced, and they had to work like 50 hours a week to go to an apartment that had like no space, no windows, stuff like that. Like that's happening in
well, and that's the thing, like with China, how many
in
people,
Asia right now,
and in China alone there's what, like 1 billion or 2 billion people.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So they don't have any restrictions on what you can do in land-wise, or what you can own, or people living in the suburbs and stuff like that. People like to live in the city, so you're going to have those majority of people that do that. But I don't really necessarily agree with people that say like we're ruining the earth in that aspect of the suburbs.
No, that's not ruining. I don't think that's ruining the earth at all. That's not the core of it. I think if anything, you start arguing like the destruction of our environment and things like that. I mean, you look at the milling of massive like acres and acres of trees in South America, which they literally call like the lungs of the world, as far as where the CO2 and oxygen exchange happens for the majority of the world happens in South America. And we've been, destroying that to make paper and shit, when we could have used just cannabis, which is a much quicker growing source, which you can make paper out of and stuff like that. I mean, you start with stuff like that. You look at actual people's housing and trying to, corral them into a small space to think that that's going to solve everything. That's not even the issue. That's not where that's coming from.
So what do you think?
That's ridiculous.
What do you think the government would gain if they had people in just cities, mass amounts of people in cities? And it was a restriction that you really couldn't have suburbs, or you couldn't, you know what I'm saying? What do you think how would they benefit from that?
I mean, if you're going into like deep conspiracy theory right now, I think it's easier to influence the minds of the masses whenever they're in close-knit groups like that. If you can, like, let's say everybody's watching the same like 3 TV channels and everything, and then you get them in a close-knit group, all of a sudden, now that information just reverberates faster throughout that, and they're easier to influence probably whenever they're that close and they're all living the same experience. Basically, it's easier to input how you'd want to control them. Basically, like if you want to get into like some deep conspiracy theory about it, I don't ever see this really taking off, because I don't see any appeal to people like, oh, I want to live in a massive fucking 20,000 person complex.
I don't think
like.
And when people talk about this subject, I don't think that you're right. I don't think it's something that's going to happen necessarily within the next 5 to 10 years. I think it's baby steps when it comes to this, because in reference to the earth and the longevity of the earth and sustainability with the earth, and for the future millennials or the future populations ahead of us, I think this is going to be baby steps. I think that that's the goal, is to eventually get to that point. Now, some conspiracy theorists think that they're doing it as soon as possible, but I'm with you. I think that would be virtually impossible to get people like that, or people nowadays, to try and buy into something like that. And if you did, you would have
Nobody's putting the chip in their hand
No.
tomorrow.
You would have to force people to do it.
Because the benefit's not there. Nobody. I mean, unless you're like, hey, come live here for free.
But so
You come live here for free, and then
right, and that could be a good point. But here's another part of the conspiracy. So like the wildfires that happened. I mean, dude, like it was like 250 million acres that got burned.
Mm-hmm.
So like people think, and there is a video of the start of the forest fire. It's an explosion. You can see it. There was satellite footage, a video that you could actually see just something happening. Like you see something come up into the air, and then it gets sucked back down, and you see the explosion, and that's where the fire started, and that's what burned all the shit that's going on right now.
Really?
Yes, and you can go online, you can find it, and no mainstream media outlets, you can't find it anywhere on the mainstream.
I heard some shit like they were charging some teenager with like they traced it back to like a teenager or some shit.
Well, after
I don't even know. I didn't follow it that much. But
no, I'll show you the video, and there's no way a teenager made an explosion like this. So the idea behind it is people think that the government is doing natural disasters and stuff like this to completely diminish, 225 million acres or 250,000 acres, whatever it was. So they now have control over all of that land. And they don't have to say shit to anyone about it. They don't have to force anyone to go anywhere else. They now have that land.
They're already out of it.
Yeah.
And they probably people with but then you have a lot of like insurance settlement and like stuff like that, which I guess the insurance companies have to deal with, which the government probably subsidizes in like some way, but to like back them up. But
exactly. So of course they're gonna have to pay people.
I wonder how long it takes for the Earth to recover from something like what happened to California. Like, is it a 10-year, 20-year? Like, what does it take to not even get back to, let's just say, to get to a livable place where you can start, where animal life comes back and all that? Because the Earth has been through a bunch of shit, whether it's man-made or just an actual natural disaster. I mean, the Earth has always come back from natural disasters. It's kind of how it works. And in fact, even in fires, after something burns, all the nutrients come back into the ground and actually fertilize the ground to allow growth to happen again.
Exactly.
So it is this kind of like cycle of life thing that happens. Like, I mean, you can't have life without destruction, like kind of thing too. But obviously, there's a negative to it if it's being started for somebody's benefit.
Yeah, the displacement of thousands of people, and I mean, it's just crazy, and if that's the way that they're doing it, it works. No one's going to question it. Like you said, they're going to charge a teenager or maybe potentially do that.
I mean, but you can almost say that this has happened before, like with the levees, whenever, like with Katrina, and then like the levees broke. I mean, you could use the same argument.
And I don't think that they've recovered in any way, shape, or form. With rebuilding houses down there or anything like that.
What was that, like back in like 2005?
Yeah.
That was like that was a long time ago. But yeah, you could almost say that the government was going to know, but then they the levees broke and all that. I guess there's multiple examples of this. So what you're saying though is that the government's or not what you're saying. You're just saying as a possibility, as far as a theory goes, that the government has overseen the destruction of this land so that they can take control over it and then do what they want with it, and probably set in some new ground rules, maybe raise prices. Because you're right, that's going to affect like everybody's place who didn't get destroyed. All their value probably went up because it's a what is that called? Supply and demand. It's just a basic supply and demand thing. Same thing with land. There's only so much land, so if it gets limited, the demand goes up, which means it's a higher value kind of thing, which I don't know if that's so much worthwhile of a conspiracy theory to just raise property value. No, somewhere to do that. There would have to be something else besides that. But
yeah, the more I think about it, and the more I've kind of looked into this Agenda 21, Agenda 30, the more I think.
Is there anything else that goes along with it? Like, do you see kind of a correlation between everything? So you're saying there might be a correlation between the burning down of these residences and then trying to maybe concentrate people into one singular area.
Yeah, correct. And you would think that, I mean, obviously hurricanes happen on the coast. These wildfires happen in California. So you really can't say that that's a strategy for them to try and push everyone into the middle or everyone into major cities, because those kinds of things naturally happen in those areas. So I don't know, man. I don't really know how I feel about it. Like I said, I don't think it's going to happen in our lifetime or even in the next 200 or 300 years. I think we're far away from it. I think that's the end goal, though.
I think one thing you have to look at is there's really no the same way that there's like really no original movies anymore. It's because everything's fucking been done. We've had enough information and are able to have so much history now and realize that humans are systematic and we're cyclical in the sense that we tend to do things over and over again. We really don't learn from shit, and we continue to do shit. I mean, we progress slowly. It's a very slow progression. And then sometimes we actually go backwards, depending on how you're looking at things. But one thing I would say is if you do have this conspiracy theory, go on ahead and go back in the history books and look to see if anything like this has been done before and attempted by another country, because chances are it has been attempted.
Well,
anytime you hear, well, I guess because of technology change, but this sounds like something that's accessible to that could have been done on a smaller level somewhere else, maybe in an attempt to control a certain population.
right.
So you would have to, I would say, if you could go back in the history books and see a smaller example of this or this attempted somewhere else, and all of a sudden some pieces kind of line up, you're able to find the motive through that.
I don't think that that's possible in this situation, just for the fact that, like you said, technology wasn't like...
And that is a factor.
Yeah, and back in the 1900s, we've almost doubled the Earth population, I mean, the Earth population 100 years ago was at like 1 billion or 2 billion.
So you're not saying this is so much of a population, like they're trying to eliminate people.
Well, that's part of it, too. That is part of the conspiracies, that they do want population control as well.
Now, whenever you say population control, are you talking about the actual number of people? Like they're trying to lessen that number?
Correct, yes.
Or... Okay,
that's part of the conspiracy theory. There's the Georgia Stones, and
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And that,
which is fucking creepy. I'm pretty sure they haven't even gotten rid of that shit.
No,
I heard about that shit goddamn, near like 9 fucking years ago. I knew about that shit.
Right,
and that's still up because that was definitely a thing. Like that was a fucking thing. But I don't know if that was just extremely misinterpreted and just like a bad idea, but that's definitely a place where, what did they say the end goal was as far as the amount? I think it was like
5 million or something like that, or
500 million. It was definitely like a massive. I mean, it would take a massive, just apocalyptic like event to happen. What's happened to my mic?
Yeah, it would. It would take something like that.
But I think there's better, more morally accessible answers to a problem, which you could say overpopulation is, it's probably getting a little crazy. Like there's
and when it comes to population, I just saw a podcast. The Crow actually did one recently on population, so you should check it out and listen to it. And a lot of it goes into census reports and just like really how do they even determine how many people really live on the earth? Like, has anyone really ever thought in their minds, anyone who's listening right now, how in the world can you just take it from someone that, the Earth's population 7 billion. We just have to agree to that. We all just say, oh yeah, and when we all talk to each other, we're out at a bar. Yeah, it's just 7 billion people on the earth. That's it. Like, how do you know that? How does anyone really even know that? You just take the government's faith in it?
No, I mean, it has to be, I think the way that they do it is their best attempt at it, because obviously there's going to be people that are unaccounted for, and there's going to be people that are maybe accounted for twice because of maybe change of name, like legally, and then maybe in a census gets counted. So you're right. It's a flawed system. I mean, how actually accurate it is, I don't know. I mean, and somebody could probably, in an attempt to tell you that, yeah, this is only about like 80% accurate or like some shit, but it's give or take, like either way. But I don't think that that's so much the thing to be worried about. Like, I remember, I think it was a Vsauce. It was like a Vsauce video that I watched. Not to like source something right now. But I'm pretty sure that they had this whole video where they said the entire population of the Earth
could fit in the state of Texas.
No, it was in Los Angeles. It was shoulder to shoulder. Could be in Los Angeles alone. Like if you fit everybody right there, just shoulder to shoulder. And you're like, man, that's a lot of fucking room. Like, you know, we have enough resources too.
The Earth's huge, bro. The Earth is huge.
The Earth is fucking massive. That's something we can agree on. I mean, we live, like, we're not country by any means, but we're pretty, you know, there's fucking country. Like, you drive about an hour south of here, and you're like, Jesus Christ, there's a lot of potential out here. I mean, there's a lot of resources. You got trees, you have fucking streams and shit, just empty fucking valleys and fucking deer and shit fucking running around. You could fucking shoot and fucking eat the dick off of and whatever it is you do with deer. but yeah, I'm always a believer. Like, you could even...
You said you shoot a dick off a deer?
No, I say eat a dick. I said eat a dick off a deer or whatever.
Could you imagine if you were hunting and like you saw this big buck and you just saw his dick and you just shot his dick?
That's fucked.
That would be fucked, man.
Have some respect. Like, no, you kill an animal, but like Indian style, where you respect it, like it's your ancestor. I think that's how they treat it.
Like try and charge
so
it.
Don't
and
shoot the
slice
dicks. You wouldn't want to fucking shoot the dick off something.
You're right.
And it's to respect the like life and
that's I just thought
the cycle of life.
I thought that's what you said. That's my bad.
Don't go shooting dicks off deers, guys.
Yeah. But don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that. Fuck, where was I going with that? Always, which, once again, I'm not an expert by any means, but I really believe that there's enough resources on the planet to sustain life because it's already doing that. It's first of all already doing that.
Exactly.
And you could say, oh, but there's starving kids in Africa. Well, I'm pretty sure I see a lot of fucking food and wasted and fat motherfuckers, in the United States.
Dude, our waste is insane.
I know. It's awful. So the resources are there to sustain life.
They're there. And who in their right mind thinks that they have the say to say, oh, well, we don't have enough resources for everyone? Who in their right mind has who has the say? Like, how do they say that? Why do they say that? Based off analytics? What analytics are you getting? Where are you getting it from?
And how accurate?
Exactly.
Is that actually?
From a computer, and you're put in a computer. The computer doesn't know the Earth, doesn't know absolutely everything about the Earth and the depths of the ocean.
There's
single
too much
forest.
data.
Exactly.
All we know is that life happens. What is that? Jeff Goldblum from fucking Jurassic Park? He's like, life finds a way. Right?
Yes, exactly.
Fucking sexy ass motherfucker. I love Jeff Goldblum. Fucking Jurassic Park.
We need to get over all this bullshit about overpopulation, and people just need to realize that there's enough resources for generations to come. The Earth's going to be fine. The Earth's going to do its thing for the next 1,000 or 2,000 years.
Yes, life will always find a way. But at the same time, it's not so much the overpopulation of people need to be. That's not what they need to be worried about. They need to be looking at the quality of life that individuals are having. So that should be the particular focus. And if it comes down to where, like, I think, like, the government needs to provide a way for a girl to have good, contraceptives? Is that the right word for it?
Yeah.
Whatever, like birth control. Whatever the fuck birth control. I'm pretty sure it's contraceptives.
And they do a good job of that. People on Medicaid get it for free.
Yeah, no, and they as they should, because you should have, access to this and then not fucking have 3 kids and not have your shit together kind of thing. And you should be given the outlet to be responsible and not be looked at as some, like, oh, look at this fucking whore, and then all of a sudden you have to go and
when you go and do, when you start going and trying,
it's an awful way to start a family.
But when you introduce contraceptive to families and stuff like that, or in this case, contraceptive is, it's going to prevent families, maybe, right? Because if you're dating someone, you have a contraceptive, maybe you don't have children.
The majority of time, people who want to have families tend to have jobs, be like, okay, they're planning for it. They're a little bit more, they're prepping for the kid. I'm talking about like the 16-year-old girl who gets drunk, her first time at a high school party and gets pregnant, and then all of a sudden.
What happens if that 16-year-old girl is Albert Einstein's mother? And I know that's just some bullshit talk, but what happens if that's the case?
All right, Billy Graham.
But for real, like,
I get it. No.
I think like,
and I'm not even talking about abortion because I've talked about abortion on here, and it's a very much a gray area for me, and I think that's a difficult subject for me.
The same
to talk about. There is no. I'm very much that's a difficult thing for me to decide. That's actually the biggest thing. as far as to where I'm like, man, I really don't know. This is a really difficult topic to discuss in general,
100%.
which should be discussed. Don't get me wrong. It should be discussed. It's not something you just sweep under the rug. I think it's going to progress along with our morality over time, and it'll eventually find a more solid, grounded place. But right now it is a very much gray area because it is human life, and I understand both sides of the argument too. But
so have you ever thought about the fact that, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but
it's fine. I was kind of rambling anyway.
So like if there were ever to be a World War III, right, and let's say that nuclear bombs weren't ever introduced into World War III and there were ground troops and people were invading countries, let's say we go into war with China or Russia, which right now the rhetoric is we're not doing too well with China, and some people think all that shit. So the thing is, if you introduce contraceptive, whether you like it or not, it's going to lessen the population of a particular country. So let's say in the United States, we have contraceptives, right?
That doesn't matter when it comes to war. Wars aren't fought by people anymore.
What I'm saying is, they are, because when we went to Afghanistan, when we went to Iraq, when we with Syria, I know it's a lot of drones and shit. What I'm saying is, if you're going against Russia or you're going against China, there will be a lot of air war. There will be ground troops. That will happen when you have major players. When you have major players in the game. But what I'm trying to say is, when it comes to contraceptives, I think before there were contraceptives, the average. And I remember listening to a podcast, and I think it was the one with Crow. At one point, Americans, they had like 2 or 3 kids. 2 or 3 kids. And I'm not quoting it from his podcast, but what I'm saying is, since contraceptives and since like propaganda and all this shit, like we're down to like 2.2 kids per family. Like eventually, like you can't sustain a society that way if you're not having a lot of kids.
You can't sustain no. You can have 2 kids and be fine and sustain society. Because those 2 kids will end up being how many kids?
But if
they each have 2 kids?
But if China has 3 kids per family and Russia has 4 kids per family, like they're going to get bigger and they're going to get stronger, and then they're going to be the more powerful country.
Okay, no. So that's a great way to look at it. You have to apply it to both sides, though. You can't just say on like one end that overpopulation is a bad thing. Now you're saying the more populated, the better.
Well, because I think overpopulation is bullshit. That's my point.
Okay, yeah, and no, I agree with you there too, because overpopulation is bullshit because we have the resources. What I say you need to look at is the overall happiness of individuals, and I think that comes through like prepping, especially because we talk about early developmental. Like we had this conversation, I don't think on here, but
we didn't.
About how important it is
the first 7 years.
The quality of life you are in your very early stages of life, and being in a happy home and being in a stable home.
It helps.
It helps out immensely to your development to have a good example, to have, healthy individuals giving you examples, of, hey, this is what love is. This is what, friendship is, that you need to share, you shouldn't be a bully to other people. Just the general basic shit, that not everybody gets to fucking learn. And they end up being, so it needs to be a taught thing. These aren't just like innate things that,
But I think regardless of how old you are when you have a kid, and regardless, I mean, dude,
but that's what I'm saying you need to focus on is look at the quality of somebody's life, not so much just because the amount of individuals really doesn't have that. It shouldn't have that much of an effect on the quality of life. It should be society in general, just how the upbringing of kids, takes place.
I think, and we've came down. It always comes down to education. Obviously, it truly does.
My dick gets hard over education.
It really does. It really does. And I'm not going to get into education, but with what you're talking,
because that's an educative process, right?
Exactly.
Whenever a child is learning those things.
Well, and not only
good social interaction.
Exactly. Not only that, though, like if a 16-year-old, and I'm only saying this because you brought it up, if a 16-year-old has a kid, and let's say that they're poor and uneducated. Regardless of the situation, they have options. In America, you have so much access to so many different things, especially being 16 and pregnant and poor, and you don't have parents that can help you out, or any family or anything like that. Mm-hmm. You get welfare, you get HUD housing, you get EBT food stamps, like you get the whole 9 yards, and you're able to. Granted, let's say that 16-year-old is with the guy that she had the kid with. They have a family at that point. They have the structure for a family. You have the male, you have the female, and you have the baby. You have the 2 things that are necessary for that kid to learn in life. And in our government, in a way, they allow it to happen.
Well, no,
So
No, it's not about it's not a matter of allowing it to happen because you have no control over that because that's up to the individual. Like them as 16-year-olds, doing whatever, that's up to them and in their own moral decisions, which you have to learn from. I'm just saying you need to give them access to not having a kid because I got to be honest, like I don't know the percentage-wise, but teenage pregnancies tend to not end up very well because they haven't even fully developed as adults themselves to even be able to raise a kid yet. But there are very few, and I'm not saying that, oh, man, your kid's fucked if you're fucking 16 and pregnant having a kid. That's not what I'm saying. There's a lot of obstacles to overcome with that. I'm just saying it's better off once you're established. Like,
So,
once you've spent enough life to realize, okay, now I'm ready for a kid. Now I'm financially stable for a kid. This is going to be, and I'm not trying to dog on,
Sure.
young people having babies. Like if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do.
Sure.
I think there's just some wisdom there to figure yourself out and actually fully grow the fuck up yourself too.
I agree
Because
with that.
I'm almost still fucking growing up myself, and I'm fucking 27.
Right.
But
So-
I'm way better off than what I was when I was fucking 18.
So just
like trust me.
Imagine being 16 and being pregnant and having a child. How much that's going to make you grow up? I'm not saying it's going to.
I'm sure that rushes the process.
For sure. But another question is, why is the human body allowed to have kids at that young of an age? And I'm not going to go down into the rabbit hole of people who are 12 or 13 years old are able to have kids. I'm saying at 16, 17, 18, why is the human body allowed to do that? Is that just so we don't go extinct? Do you think that that's why that's the case?
There's been no cause in our evolutionary process to like not have it that way. But
like if you're not mentally ready and with the wisdom and all that shit, like why would in our DNA
because they
allow
survive.
it?
Okay, because this is
survival.
simple. It's because they survive. If you're 16 and have a kid and survive, then more people who are 16 are clearly, oh, hey, they lived. I'm going to do it. If everybody who got pregnant, if every female that got pregnant at 16 died, guess how many fucking 16-year-old pregnancies there would be? Obviously zero.
That's not the case, though.
I know. That's what I'm saying. That's why it happens, is because biologically it's able to happen. There is no biological consequence. I'm putting quotations up here. There is no biological consequence to being pregnant at 16. What I'm saying is, as far as the human development goes, we're not just some animal that you can just birth like a fucking snake does and they're fucking ready to go. And they just come out fucking with all the knowledge that they need to fucking survive. They don't need parents. We are very much reliant upon parents and this learning how to do human things correctly. And we even still, like, I had great parents. My parents were in their 40s whenever they had me. Yes, I'm doing that math in my head. My parents were in their 40s. Already had 5 other kids. Had all the fucking life experience, all the fucking shit. And I still fucked up. Man. Like seriously.
So age doesn't mean shit.
Well, no, that's not what I'm saying.
They had all the wisdom, Jesse. They had all the wisdom. And what did you go out and do?
No, you're right. No, you're right. I fucked up.
Yeah.
I wasn't, but I'm a lot better now because of them. Because I rely on. I look back now and I go, oh man, this is why they made me do this. This is why I wake up every day and I'm not lazy. It's because my dad fucking worked hard every day and I got to watch him work hard every day. So I get to, get from that. This is why I say yes ma'am, no ma'am. This is why I say please and thank you. It's because of my mom. This is why I hold doors open. It's because of my mom. I get it from my mom. And they were great people. You don't get me wrong, I still fucked up. In a whole bunch of ways. I'll probably still fuck up in the future. But I have this great example to rely on as far as, who I'm going to be in the future. And I think that's detrimental. Because, let's take an individual like myself and give them no positive influence. Dude, I would have probably fucking murdered somebody by now. Been smoking crack, fucking sucking dick out on fucking Truth, been in fucking, Leavenworth by now. If I didn't have my fucking parents.
No,
it is a possibility.
And that's a whole nother story, though. But I think that's all I'm going to hit on Agenda 21, bro. I think we hit it hard. Very nice and chill.
Yeah.
For what you knew about it, 30 minutes wise, it's pretty sexual.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. I want to get your thoughts, man. You don't have to go too entirely deep on this about the caravan that's going on down in Tijuana right now. So your thoughts on all this stuff that's going on there?
Oh man, with the caravan?
Yes.
I've been following it so deeply lately, and I have so many opinions on it.
Have you really?
No.
I have. I've been watching so many videos.
So you're just talking about immigration then? Is it because this is an immigration ordeal, right?
Well, yeah, saying it's a humanitarian crisis right now. What's going on? It's literally flooding there in Mexico. How much rain they've gotten the past few days, and you have like 8,000 to 10,000 people there, and they're expecting like 4,000 to 6,000 more people in the oncoming weeks and months.
Are we sending any kind of relief efforts or?
So basically, I think that there's like 1,200 border agents, or no, there's 1,200 National Guard. There's 5,000 to 6,000 U.S. troops, and then you have the Border Patrol agents at the border.
I'm gonna solve all this for you right now. You ready for this?
Yeah.
You ready for this?
Yes.
Legalize all fucking drugs. Legalize all drugs. That eliminates the cartel. Cartel no longer has funding. No longer can they have a corrupt government, and you actually get a solid political leader in Mexico. And then all of a sudden now they're going to be able to be prosperous. Boom, solved it. And all of a sudden the economy is going to grow.
So I
just got you, and then people will be able to live there perfectly fine.
I thought about this, and I was thinking in my head.
Just solved it.
You think you solved it, but think about it.
No,
like
I know. That was mainly a joke.
Right, but think about it and I was thinking about it like this, and we'll get back into the caravan here shortly. But I was thinking in my head, I'm like, you know what? Like maybe Mexico has. I mean, granted, with the way that their country is, it's shitty, right? Except if you go to Mexico City, it's prosperous there. I would assume. I've never been to Mexico. I don't know what they are geopolitically or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But like, the cartel will not stand for the government. They will not back down. They're saying, hey, no, I'm going to grow whatever the fuck I want, and you can't do shit about it. And if you do something about it, I will infiltrate your police system. I will infiltrate the government, and we will still be here, and we'll be prosperous.
And that's what they've done.
Yeah. What's wrong with that? Well, other than the fact that they kill a lot of people, which I don't agree with. I don't agree with what they do in small cities and small towns and stuff like that. I do not condone that in any way, shape, or form. But to the point of the fact that they stand up to the government and say, hey, like we're going to grow pot. I mean, granted, they do heroin and all that stuff too, which is really bad. But
I don't think it's just cocaine.
Well, cocaine and pot.
Heroin comes from Asia.
Yeah. They say, no,
I
we're not.
watched American Gangster, so I know how that goes down.
So they're not backing down is what I'm saying. They're not backing down.
Well, they don't have to back down because there's too much money. All you have to do is pay people off. All they do is pay the right people off. And yeah, there is okay. The majority of it is, I guarantee you, paying the right people off. And then the other portion of it is violence. This is how they're able to sustain what they're doing. Like, because the market's there. Like,
the market's here in the United States.
Yeah,
and
I know.
Drug lords still get arrested. In Mexico, that doesn't happen.
The war on drugs is a fucking joke. That's a fucking joke.
What I'm saying is, do you not get any of your fancy tickled by the fact that they actually have people who stand up to the government? That's what I'm asking.
Not in this way, because it's not. I think you're wording it incorrectly, because it's not them standing up to the government. It's them shitting on the people. It is what it ends up being. It ends up being people live in fear. People have to now abide by a violent tyrant's fucking rules, who is ever the fucking leader of the fucking cartel in Mexico, which isn't right. I mean, it's a tyrant leadership is what it comes down to, a corrupt tyrant leadership.
If I'm not mistaken, the person who built the stadium where the Chiefs and Rams were going to play, do you know who paid for that?
Who?
El Chapo.
El Chapo? Nice.
Yeah.
That motherfucker built his own prison.
Yeah.
And like sentenced himself to jail. Like, I mean, that's the most gangster ass fucking thing I ever fucking heard of.
Same with Pablo Escobar. He did that too.
No, it's an incorrupt distribution of wealth through illegal actions and through a lot of addiction and people suffering. I think, and there's no way to sugarcoat it.
Okay, and what does the government do? They do the absolute same thing, except on a more massive scale.
You can say that for the most part, but the government was initially designed
for the most part.
If you talk about like capitalism in the U.S. and the U.S. government was initially designed for.
You and I both know that capitalism is still not alive in the United States.
You're right. It is like everything else an imperfect system and has now been corrupted because this is what happens. But they don't do enough to where it flips the script and then there's a revolution and then it resets and then we come up with a new word and a new way of living.
I wonder how many people die from overdose on drugs, like marijuana, cocaine.
None on marijuana.
Okay,
so cocaine probably
some.
Probably yeah,
but not even close to the amount of people that die on pharmaceutical drugs.
Oh no, not even close.
In that aspect,
I think it's coronary heart disease is actually the number one killer of people.
So
I know in America.
Yeah, coronary heart disease. So that's obviously diet, and that's another thing that you could talk about with the FDA. But when it comes to big pharma, they are worse than the cartel with how many people they kill in the United States each and every year. So when you boil it down, and when it comes down to the facts, big pharma is worse than the cartel. They're just silent about it. They don't use guns. They push away shit that's natural that actually helps you, which slowly we're getting back to, thank God, with the legalization of medical marijuana in the state that we live in. But big pharma is the number one.
It's fucking hard to disagree with you. It's very difficult to disagree with you. But they do it on even though the morals. Yeah, I know. So technically legally. But just because something's done legally doesn't make it morally correct either. Like I'm sure under, German law, the Nazis went to war legally,
Sure.
and did all their shit legally, like through whatever human documents were like written down. So you're right. That doesn't correlate to morality so much. Man, that is... Oh, man, that's fucking big, man. I didn't think about that comparison. I mean, that's sad that it's even... You know what? It's sad that I'm even having to, go through my brain and that comparison, because there is a comparison. You're absolutely right. There is a comparison between the cartel and then big pharma, as far as, I mean, rich individuals selling drugs to addicted people, and there's death involved. Even though there is, there are differences. They're not using guns or anything. Well, I guess you could say that the DEA is going around with like guns, and there's violence there, but probably not as much as well, I don't know, man. There might be more violence like from the DEA and gang related violence that, just like the selling of illegal pharmaceuticals fucking causes. And that's why I've always said, and people fucking called me fucking, oh man, you're fucking crazy. Oh, of course pot should be legalized. Of course fucking weed should be legalized. Why not everything else? Oh, because then everybody would be smoking meth. Oh, really? Meth is legal? You're going to go out and start smoking meth today? No, I wouldn't. Exactly. The people that want to fucking smoke meth are going to fucking smoke meth.
Right. So, no, dude, I'm watching live PD, okay? And this is a prime example of what you just said, okay? And even if you want to go smoke meth in your own house and someone calls the cops on you, if you're in a legit town and the cops are completely honest and doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is serve and protect, right?
Yeah.
And not enforce some bullshit laws that our congressman said that they should enforce. Anyways, sorry, I went off on a tangent there. Literally, this dude calls the cops and says, hey, there's this chick in my house. I don't want her here. I don't know why she's here. She needs to get out. She hit me. She's threatening me. She needs to get out of my house. So the police show up to his house. The dude's clearly on something. He's literally telling the cops, like, man, like, I need you, like, this chick's like, she threatened to kill me. She had a knife. Like, she needs to get out of my house. They go into the house, right?
Yeah.
They find the chick. She's actually fairly attractive, but she's been doing crack cocaine with this guy.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, like, this is this dude's house. Like, what's going on here? And she's like, yeah, like, you can clearly tell he's on some drugs right now. Like, I'm just staying here. I've stayed here for the past 3 nights. I need somewhere to stay and all this. The cops made her leave his house while he's telling the cops that there are cameras inside of his house in his ceiling fan. And the cops like, well, show me. So they go into the house. The dude's looking up. He's like, see it? It's right there. It's right there. And the fan's just going like this. And he's like, it's right there. And the cop's like, grab it for me. And he's like, well, I can't. The dude's on crack.
Yeah.
And then the chick's like, well, why aren't you arresting him? He's clearly on fucking crack. She's like, we can't. He's in his house. He's not harming anyone. That's what it should be. And that's exactly what happened. Okay,
so we're in agreement there.
Yes.
Even though that's against the law, you still have to be in, because individuals make bad decisions, and I think crack is a bad decision.
Yes, 100%.
I think crack is a bad decision.
But the cops did their job in that instance. Yeah. 100% did their job.
This has always been my go-to. You should be able to do whatever you want. I'm a libertarian. I believe in freedom. You should be able to do whatever you want. If you want to fucking smoke meth, but the second you start affecting other individuals, that's when it becomes a problem. Do I think you should be able to have a kid and then be, smoking meth? No, probably not. But I guess it gets a little bit down a rabbit hole there with that one.
Oh yeah, and that shit happens, and it's unfortunate, and it shouldn't happen.
Yeah,
and
it shouldn't happen.
That's it. I think like what you're trying to say though is if you were to legalize all drugs, I think you would see a decrease in the amount of drug use and the amount of crime. You would see a decrease.
I think the amount of drug use is correlated to the overall happiness of the population as far as opportunity goes. I think people really like to use drugs whenever they feel unfulfilled because it really fulfills. And I know I'm probably generalizing a lot here, and I'm sure a lot of other reasons too. But I think for the most part, people use drugs to try to fill some kind of like empty space or like an unfulfilled portion of them, which is why they end up doing what they do.
Well, anyone from the ages of 16 to 24, if they're experimenting with drugs, of course that's going to happen. You're trying to find yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's nothing, and I don't see anything wrong with experimenting with drugs, and then, and experiencing life. I would never be like, oh man, you fucking, you did some cocaine back when you were 22. You're a piece of shit. By the way, no president would ever be in office if that was the fucking case.
Right.
But because okay, first of all, we're natural scientists. Like we question things. Like what do little kids do? Little kids, why? What just all kinds of questions, right? I don't know if your kid is there yet, but no. I know like every kid gets to that point to where they just start asking a shit ton of questions. You start asking the same shit. Oh wait, I'm gonna fucking do this shit. I'm gonna fucking be able to do math fucking for like 16 hours and get my fucking college shit done like hella quick. Fuck yeah, let me fucking pop this fucking pill. Like, so no, there's nothing wrong with experimentation. I think the addiction portion of it is where the whole you don't feel fulfilled kind of thing comes from. But
somewhere down the line,
on a tangent there, I can't even remember where our origin was.
Somewhere down the line, some shit had to have happened for meth and shit like drugs like that to be created. That is so addictive that it actually hurts the population as opposed to being a beneficial drug, like a natural drug. Meth is nowhere in any way, shape, or form close to being natural, if I'm correct.
Oh God, no.
Yeah. So no. And that was created by someone whatever. But we all know like the legitimate drugs that are natural.
I mean, yeah, you can tell that. I mean,
I'm sorry. I'm going to disagree with you. I'm going to say that methamphetamine should not be legal. I mean, if you're going to legalize drugs, you legalize the natural drugs.
No, and that's where it should start. Obviously, that's where it is going to start. But I think what you end up finding out is that no prohibition in any way works. You can't tell a human being
because they're still going to do it.
Because they still end up doing it, and in fact, you actually fuel them to do it more because you tell them no.
Yeah.
Because nobody likes to be told no.
Right.
Look at anybody. Don't even like politicians. They don't like being told no. Man. No, it makes them fight harder, right?
Motherfucking politicians, man.
I know. No, it comes down to anything. People don't like being told no.
No.
Especially when you're like, I'm doing this because I want to be doing this.
No.
And I'm not affecting anybody else. Well, it does affect other people. But
no.
It can hurt their family and shit like that when it comes to addiction. But
no.
No?
No. I was just saying no because you said no one likes to hear the word no.
Nobody.
Which is true. Yeah.
No, I got a little frustrated.
I think Jordan Peterson, he was like,
I love that motherfucker. Yeah, he was saying, Jordan Peterson's my boy, man.
He was saying like,
love Jordan Peterson.
He was like try to not tell your kid no as many times as you can say yes. It's like the more you tell your kid no, like that you're hindering their development as a child. So like I've kind of just implemented that into me being a father, like just being that cool. I mean, not necessarily cool. I mean, sometimes you got to tell your kid to say stop. Like, don't do that. Like, don't get in the way.
You want them to die,
right?
But yeah. So but I get it.
The more you tell someone no, the more likely they are not going to succeed in life.
Yeah.
Because then they get that. It's that mindset, like we talked about. Between the ages of 1 to 7 is a very crucial time for a child development, and the more you tell them no, that's going to lead on into their life.
Yeah.
What do you think about gun control and all the shit that's going on in the world right now? Do you think that gun control is necessary? We have an alarming amount of people dying by guns, mass shootings, all that stuff. But I mean, how much of it is society-based knowledge? I mean, yes. I don't know, man.
Yes, gun control is necessary. It all depends on what
do you mean
level?
What do you mean it's necessary?
Of intensity? Of course, gun control is necessary.
In what way?
you have to be able to.
Who does the killing? Who does the killing?
Violent people.
Does the gun do the killing?
No.
So why is there a need for gun control? What does the Second Amendment say? The right to bear arms, right? Shall not be infringed. So when you're saying that gun control is necessary, you are infringing on that Second Amendment right.
But it's also, this is a really basic idea that, oh man, this guy has killed people with guns before in an unnecessary manner, not in self-defense. Probably should not be able to own a gun anymore, right? That seems, I mean, do you disagree with that?
I don't disagree with that. You're right. He shouldn't have a gun, yeah.
So in that sense, that is gun control, because you're controlling an individual. The same way with somebody has driven recklessly fucking like 5 times and gotten into fucking 6, high-speed wrecks and put like 10 people in the fucking hospital. Probably after a certain amount of time, you probably shouldn't have a fucking license anymore. Like, sorry,
so it's license control at that point.
So now you're talking license control. I mean, everything. Society has set a standard to where, okay, you don't meet this standard. So let me say this. What about a gun standard? No more gun control. You just have to meet a gun standard, meaning you have to be a competent human being. Basically, I don't even, like, fuck gun control. You need to meet a gun standard. You don't threaten to shoot up schools. You have a non-violent background, just, name off some things that are just general, that you would make sense to where, like, man, this guy probably doesn't need a fucking gun. There are some individuals out there like that, But, no, so I guess in the sense that's gun control too, but I think I like that better. I like that word better. You need to meet a gun standard, that you are, a competent human being able to own a firearm without being a threat to yourself or other people around you. Like, let's say somebody is like threatening suicide, like they've threatened suicide a bunch. Probably, also shouldn't have a gun. That's an easy way out. Probably needs to be looked at as far as, on a psychological level and stuff like that. So there needs to be some kind of regulation set in there with that, just because of that, the high opportunity of what could happen. Now where they're taking it right now probably is too aggressive, because that doesn't. Now, whenever you're talking about like the like all the gun violence is what I'm assuming you're getting to, all the school shootings and stuff like that. Even take away a gun from a violent individual that wants to see people die, they'll find another way. It's the individual that is violent. And the gun is just the means to an end. You take away the gun, they'll burn the building down, they'll make a pipe bomb, they'll find the means. They will find the means. They don't have to have the gun. And it's not those people that, by the way, are fighting for the right for their gun either. I think is what you end up noticing within this whole argument. It's the individuals that are like, this is my freedom. This is my right to protect myself. This is my right to protect my family against, and I'm pretty sure it's even stated somewhere in the amendments, against government too, which is a big thing. I think we can both agree on that. You need to be able to stand up in a malicious sense against, tyranny, whether it comes from overseas or on your own soil, have the ability to combat that. So I think in that sense, that's gone a little out of stray. The violence itself that is happening, where all this gun control is happening from, it's not the guns, it's the individuals.
Right. Because,
like I said, they'll find a way to do their evil.
Exactly.
Evil will find its way.
The amount of guns that are in the United States is unimaginable, right? So there's always gonna be someone who's gonna have access to a weapon. And to the fact that if you were to get rid of guns, and I'm just gonna go off on a few different areas right here based off everything that you just said. You can't get rid of all the guns when it comes to the population, because once again, we have to be able to go against our government if it ever became tyrant, right?
Yes.
Obviously and even if we wanted to do that, the amount of weaponry that they have is unfathomable.
It's already too late,
Yeah,
basically.
Exactly.
You're too late in the game.
Yeah,
son.
but still,
Yeah.
like at least
No,
let
you
us,
really are.
at
Yeah.
least let us feel like we have that option, right? So in that aspect, we have to have weapons because they're already here on Earth. They're already a part of our society. They're already a part of the government controlling us and when what we do and how we do it. And if anything were ever to go array, they could control us in any way that they wanted us, any way that they wanted us to be, right?
It's true.
So we need to be able to defend ourselves. So in any way when it comes to gun control, they need to slow down the rhetoric when it comes to that because you're affecting the way for us to be able to defend ourselves when it comes to that aspect, when it comes to us against the government if it were ever to get that far or that deep in that instance, right?
Yes.
So when it comes to what you said, a gun standard, I like that. It sounds good. It sounds nice, right?
It does.
As opposed to restrictions. Or
As opposed to gun control.
Yeah.
You need to set a gun standard.
Yeah. I agree with that. And I think there are a lot of people out there that are pro Second Amendment that would disagree. They don't think that there should be any restrictions at all. And you made a perfect point. If someone's shot someone and didn't get it charged for some reason or
it wasn't
another,
self-defense.
yeah. Like odds are with the amount of guns that are in America, he's going to be able to find another gun.
You're right.
You know, and that's his that he doesn't want a knife. He doesn't want throwing stars. He wants a gun, and he's going to do it again. And there's been instances out there where I'm sure that crime has occurred.
Oh, of course.
There needs to be a standard. You're 100% right on that. But how you go about it, and with the politicians that we have in place now, and the government that we have now, I don't think you can trust that. That's the only shitty part about it. You can't trust them. So when the government comes out and says, hey, we're going to make a gun standard, you can't trust them. And that is just frustrating that we're in a place where we can't trust our own government. Which means, in the first thing that I just talked about, we need guns even more at that point. So that leaves us at square one. And even in the fact when it comes to gun standards, that guy that's still going to find a gun because guns are already here. No matter what, he's going to find a gun. The criminal will always find what he needs to commit the crime.
I think amongst all the chaos and all the fucking tragedy that's going to happen, because it's inevitable, there's never going to be a perfect world. There's always going to be tragedy. I think you just have to hope that people hold on to what's true in life, which
education.
Yeah, I wasn't going to try not to say education on this whole thing I was about to say. But yeah, education and just realizing what it really means to be happy. It's not, being offended by somebody else to where you have to take a violent action against them. Obviously, you need to, it's like that whole, what was it, Harry S. Truman that said, talk soft but carry a big stick kind of thing, whenever it came to the first, like the atomic bombs and stuff like that. I guess same thing with, if you're a gun owner, you should never be looking for an opportunity to fucking use your gun. I think
right.
that should be the farthest thing from your mind. I think it's the same way with that American mentality, as you talk soft but carry a big stick in case there is that, that threat to where you are now able to defend yourself kind of thing. So I think that you just need to focus on hoping to never having to use your gun and every means possible not to have to, use a weapon of some kind. But you need to.
Wouldn't it make
sense?
sense?
You should have it.
Wouldn't it make sense that if there were a crime to occur with a weapon, that you would have as many people possible in that same area where that person's about to commit the crime? And granted, they need to be of age, for them to have weapons as well to control the situation.
This is that's an interesting thing, because it's not just.
And I'm not done.
Okay.
But they are well educated with that weapon, and they are able to use the weapon.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
If you have to be tactically trained, because you don't want somebody that just has a gun.
It needs to be part of school.
Only went through like 30 rounds through the pistol, and then all of a sudden thinks he's going to be able to fucking shoot 3 feet differently between the shooter and then a civilian back behind him.
Right.
That shit's almost.
As crazy it sounds, why not in like your junior or senior year have a class where everyone is required to shoot a weapon, to know what it's like?
My family grew up that way. To be honest with you, dads take their sons out, and you learn how the ins and the outs of of weaponry.
Exactly.
You get taught the safety of it. You get taught you treat it like it's loaded all the time. It's always pointed to the ground unless you're at your target. Never at anybody else, no matter what. It's just, and you get, no, I was taught gun safety when I was like fucking like 7 years old with my grandpa.
And here's the thing.
My grandpa took me out onto the farm with his little fucking 22 fucking squirrel shooting, like it was some weird bolt action, but for just like a 22 like long rifle round that it held. He called it a squirrel rifle. That's how I learned to shoot, but he taught me how important it was to respect a firearm, and that it takes, it can take a life, but you also need to know how to use it properly.
Right. And for anyone who's listening this deep in the podcast, just think about that. Like, think about it, Think about what we just talked about when it comes to having a weapon. Like, you're going to need it at one point. Maybe not. But if you were ever to need it and you didn't have it, then what do you do? Like, the government will always have weapons. We are past the point where there are no weapons.
It should be treated with the same amount of respect as any other like life-threatening thing, which there's a lot of other life-threatening things that you handle all the time.
Right. So someone breaks into your house. Let's say the government bans guns like they did in Australia. You cannot own a gun in Australia. Mm-hmm. You are not allowed. And someone comes into your house and it's a criminal, right? And somehow Australia, their government, they didn't find that guy. And they didn't know he had a gun, but he still has it. And he comes into your house. And he's coming in your house to do harm. And he breaks down your door, or he picks the lock. Mm-hmm. And you hear him, and he has a weapon. And the government says, you know what? You're not allowed to have a weapon. So all you have is knives and bats in your house. This dude has a fucking shotgun. What do you do?
Oh, man.
There's nothing you can do. Nothing. And let's say you're just an average Joe. You don't know karate. You don't know jiu-jitsu. You don't know any style of fighting. Yes, you have survival instinct. Yes, and you have 3 kids in your house. How do you protect your house? How? In a world where there is weapons, in a world where there are guns, so many guns, probably more guns than there are people in this earth. How do you defend that? How does the government come and say, yes, we're going to take your gun just because all this act of violence that's going out there? But what is the government going to tell me when someone comes into my house and shoots me up or my family and they want to take what I have? How am I supposed to protect myself?
That's absolutely fair to think that. But if you look at that in an actual situational experience, like, do you just keep a loaded gun like close to you like all the time, and like
doesn't matter it doesn't matter where the gun is, but if it's there and you can defend yourself, that's all that matters.
Yeah. No, and I agree too. Like realistically, that would be very hard if somebody's planning, because nobody should be living in fear. That's not how our society should be. But no, I'm still agreeing that can be a thing. I'm just not to shit on all that. I'm just thinking that it's a little difficult to, because like if it's like locked up in a gun case and somebody breaks into your house, do you have the 2 minutes it would take to run and like get the gun out of the case and all that too? And then it's almost scary to also just keep, a loaded gun just like chilling somewhere too. But I'm not saying you can't do that, but.
I mean, be smart too. I mean, we have the survival instinct, and it's come to having weapons to have that, to be able to survive in some instances.
Yeah, no, and I'm saying you
I don't know.
You should have that right.
I forget the statistic, but like the amount of lives that guns saved last year alone is insane. It's just crazy the amount of lives that it actually saved as opposed to killed. But we're at the top of the hour, man. Thank you for everyone for listening. We did not hit the caravan very well. Jesse evaded that very well, and I told him straight to his face that I'd get an answer out of him, but he evaded the caravan.
I don't even know how the fuck that happened, man.
He just did, man. He did. So good to have you back, Jesse. I know it was only 2 weeks, but hey, man, sometimes it is what it is. But we hit it hard, man, on fucking Agenda 21 and population control. We hit it hard a little bit on just drugs. When it comes to the use of drugs and natural drugs, we should be able to use them. Big Pharma kills way more people than the cartel does, in my opinion. Yeah. And that's probably not even an opinion. That's probably true facts. And Jesse and I just hit it hard on gun violence. So hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the bell notification.
Yeah, no. Show us all the love. Shoot us some comments. We want to hear what you want us to talk about. Yeah, all that. Stay fly and ring the bell,